Hello and welcome to Shattered Lives, Reach Ireland's crime podcast. I'm Paul Healy. I'm crime correspondent for the Irish Daily Star and the Irish Mirror. And I'm really getting fed up saying the same thing every single podcast. I can see Mick laughing at me, but hello to Michael O'Toole, our crime and defence editor.
Wasn't a laugh, it was more a very strong smile.
Well, we have
How are
to have
you?
we have to have an intro of sorts, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. We could do something about it's where I shouted Healy.
You could,
Something like
yeah,
that.
you could. We'll make it more kind of true to life, yeah, where we're just
Do,
having a row for
do you know what
20
we should do?
minutes.
We should do the outtakes one day for the laugh. No, I wouldn't be very good.
But people see the real us.
Oh, Jesus Christ Almighty. Pray for us. Anyway,
So you were in Spain on a lovely jolly. No, you weren't on a jolly. You were on a very interesting story. You received a tip off about John Gilligan.
yes. So Mick O'Neill and I, the photographer, went over to Alicante, a place near Torrevieja, which is south of Alicante. It's very well known. It's very popular with Irish people. And Mick and I had been over there in June 2021, which is the 25th anniversary of the murder by John Gilligan's gang of Veronica Guerin. Gilligan was charged with that murder. He was acquitted by as we've spoken about plenty of times, the non-jury special criminal court, even back in the day. I think that was 2001. So we confronted him then. He had nothing to say. We got a tip that he'd moved home. So there were two reasons for the visit. Firstly, that he'd moved home, and there were very strong rumours in Dublin and in Spain that he had cancer, an aggressive form of cancer. So
Mm.
we wanted to see if he would talk about that, if it was true. And we also wanted to confront him again. So we got there on Sunday morning and we were expecting to stay there for 3 days. You know yourself, in stakeouts like this,
Yeah.
it can be right. Okay, we'll give ourselves 3 days just in case we don't get him. We got him within an hour, and it's just the usual. Oh fuck! And the defense force, I do defense. The defense forces have this saying, which is no plan survives contact with the enemy. Right. My
Mm.
version of that is, oh shit. In other words, you plan out so we're planning out what we're going to do. We're going to sit here and we'll try and get video of him, and we'll get pictures, and then we'll talk to him. He just came out carrying rubbish. You put it in the bin. They have communal bins over there. So it's, oh, Jesus Christ, he's here.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I ran out and got him. It was so quick. I didn't even have time to turn on I record on your phone
Oh,
for audio. Didn't have time to do that. Everything went out the window. And I was thinking of the army lads, because they always go, no plan survives a contact with the enemy. And ours didn't. It was just, holy shit, he's there. And it was like a moment of terror and exhilaration and panic and fear and excitement all wrapped up together. And of course, now this is one interesting thing, right? When I confronted him, when I went up to him, I said, John, right? And he stopped and he turned to face me. And it was almost as if he was bracing himself for something to happen. Not maybe
oh,
somebody he thought he was going to attack, just the way he turned and he stood and I said, Mick O'Toole from the Star. And he turned away and walked into his house, right?
all
But
right.
just that one thing, he faced whoever, he didn't know who it was because it was sort of side on. We were parking the side up and he didn't know, but he turned to face whatever was coming to him.
And of course, he'd have reason to be paranoid. He has previously been the target of an
Yeah.
assassination hit. Obviously, he survived that, and he has spoken
Hmm?
about the fact that he might one day be targeted again. So,
Yeah.
he,
And so essentially what happened was we had the story about him having cancer and uh, he looked well, I have to say. I thought he looked well.
mm,
So we were making a few inquiries. There are people we speak to, and I did have someone who would have we call it in the story in the Star the next day, we called him an associate. So I was on to that man and that person messaged me, contacted me later on to say, John says hello and he's healthy.
ah,
So and I was sitting there going, just this is a journalistic thing. Can I go on him on saying he has cancer? If we can say that there are underworld sources saying, very good underworld sources saying he has cancer.
mm,
But the fact that someone close to him spoke on his behalf changed the whole story. So it was, and I thought it
he
was quite
didn't.
funny
He
because he
turns it into a
essentially
denial.
it turns into a denial. And I thought it was very good. The subs in our place, as I said, we had a picture of him carrying stuff out to the bin, bag of rubbish. So the headline was, "It's all rubbish," which is very good. And, because I was sitting going, "Will it do about him bringing the rubbish out?" I was going, "I don't know." And
it worked out well.
It did.
Well,
it did.
To be fair, had you not got that denial, it probably would have been actually a trickier story to write. So, in a sense, it sort of kind of made the story for you, didn't it? Because once he said nothing to you, you were faced with that sort of kind of debacle of, right, well, although I'm sure you trust your sources, it's a difficult thing to say somebody has cancer, no matter who they are, when, you're taking it off somebody's word. But certainly your information was that John Gilligan has been telling those close to him that he has prostate cancer.
Yes, but when you're dealing with a source, they have to establish their bona fides.
Yeah.
And I had Gilligan's address. So Gilligan had moved several times since we got him the last time. So, bona fides were established, to put it that way.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying there? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So
you trust your source, obviously.
Yes, but at the same time, I did go out of my way to contact the associate of Gilligan. Maybe it was playing not at the back of my mind, but at the front and even the middle of my mind, going, "Oh, Jesus, I really have to." We put it to him when he walked away from us, which I had to go the extra bit. So I did do a 4 seasons. There's a 4 tops or 4 seasons, and reached out to somebody, and I got it back. And I was glad I did. I was glad I went the extra mile, because no matter what he's done, it's still his life, and we have to. Mistakes are made, but you have to try and be accurate.
You want to be accurate, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But obviously, the significance of him possibly being quite unwell is a huge story, and that's why you travelled over there. And it's great that you got the couple of days to do it. That wasn't the only day then that you spotted him.
No, so we were joking about this. As I said, we had 3 days, and I've been on stakeouts that have lasted a week, and I've been on stakeouts that have lasted 20 minutes. Not that long. Different from yourself. So we did give ourselves 3 full days there. I said, right, that should be enough. If our intelligence is right, that should be enough. As I said, he walked out within the hour. So what did we do? The next one, I knew he wasn't going to talk to us, but we thought we'd get some fresh picks. Who knows? He may have been involved in meetings. You just never know. So we did stake him out for the following day, couple of days, and we did get him on the last day, which was Wednesday, and he came out, did the same thing, went to the bins, and then he walked away, and then I think we got him later on. He was in a part near of the town where he lives, near Torre Vieja. He was walking around a pub and that sort of stuff, and then we lost him. So, but now it was 3 days, and everybody, my august colleagues, think we're having a great time when we're well and jolly. It was 36 degrees in the car. We couldn't have the aircon on because we would 2 things. Because if we turned the engine on, the parking lights would have come on, and that would have
attract attention.
Exactly. So turned off the engine, and you baked for 6 hours, and it was.
Oh, I know that feeling.
It's not a jolly. I joke about it being a jolly, but we were sweating for our company. I'll put it that way. Anyway,
and a stakeout is like that, isn't it? I mean, as you're saying, you managed to get John Gilligan within the hour, which is extraordinary. It's gas, isn't it? But oftentimes you're spent hours, if not days, sitting in a car waiting for somebody to come out.
Especially when we go abroad, I always find it fascinating that you're given information. You get on a plane in Dublin, you fly God knows how many kilometers, you hire a car, you drive somewhere, and your information's right, and the person is there. There's something about that. I go, how the fuck do we, you know what I mean? Just you go from one country to another, like it's a pin drop, and the person's there. But that's how important intelligence is, and trusting your sources.
It was a great story. I was surprised to see, again, social media isn't the best place to go in terms of a reaction. I'm sure that most people enjoyed the story, but some people are saying, "Oh, leave the man alone, and he deserves privacy." This is someone whose gang is responsible for the murder of a journalist. I don't know if he's entitled to any privacy, but just something I was curious about. The house that you the doorstep him at was quite different to the one he was at previously. I mean, he's downgraded somewhat in terms of the wealth that he has around him anyway.
Yeah, so the house we got him at in 2021, it looked like an 8-bedroom. It was a huge, big villa. It had a veranda or a terrace. It had a swimming pool. It had, I think a double garage. It had a wee laneway leading to the house. It was In fact, at one stage, I remember Mick and I were driving around trying to get a better view, and we went up to a hill, and you could see. Now it was about 2 kilometers, but you could see the house in its standing in its own glory. So it was a very, very significant property. This one is much smaller. I would guess probably 2-bedroom house. There's a Spanish word, a finca. It's like a gîte in France. Almost a small cottage. So we couldn't see any swimming pool. It didn't have and it was in an estate in a development. So it's probably 10-15% the size of his previous house.
Wow.
So yeah, he's moved on.
And in terms of just your story, obviously you published it. You then found out that he wasn't happy about that story, and that he was actually then, I suppose, grilling people to try and find out the source of the leak, so to speak.
Yes, he was asking people in Torrevieja. He lives near. I'm not going to say where, but he lives near Torrevieja, and there would be an awful lot of Irish people there, and he was asking who told us. So not going to happen.
Great story. And speaking of great stories, we had a story that I suppose we didn't necessarily expect to get last week, and that was thanks to our wonderful listeners. So we have been asking for questions. We're doing a Q&A pod. It's due to come out shortly enough, and amongst that, we received an interesting question about Patsy Hutch.
Yes, and credit to Paul Healy, because I've been collating all the questions. I think we've got about 24. I think you and I would agree they're probably enough for 2 pods, because we don't want to rush through the questions, and some of them are really, 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 really interesting, I find. So we were given these questions, and I was collating them all, and somebody said, a file has gone to the DPP about Patsy, and I went, yeah, put it in. But you spotted it. Is that true? Because
a file has gone to the DPP. Yeah.
Fucking hell. So we were making inquiries because we thought it'd be a great story if a file has gone to the DPP. Just for the context is, in 95% of cases, when Gardaí send a file to the DPP, who decides if a person is to be charged or not, the Gardaí put a recommendation in. And the way we usually write this is, the recommendation would be, we recommend that the person be charged. So we always say, I did it, for example, we found out that a file had gone to the DPP in relation to Jerry Hutch, who was later acquitted, obviously. And our story was charge him. Gardaí asked DPP to charge him, which is what happened in the end. So I think you and I were hoping we would get that DPP has received a file from the guards about Patsy Hutch. To divert for a second, you can explain what Miss Justice Tara Burns said about Patsy Hutch in the judgment that acquitted Jerry, his brother.
Yeah, well, Patsy Hutch has never been charged with any offence, but during the trial of Jerry the Monk Hutch, as you mentioned, there was a lot of evidence about Patsy Hutch, and in the summation of the evidence by Miss Justice Tara Burns, she said that the evidence showed that Patsy Hutch, Jerry's brother, was centrally involved in the transfer of the weapons, so the AK-47 rifles that were used in the Regency, and that he was probably involved in the overall plot of the Regency Hotel shooting. So here you had a man who was on trial who was ultimately acquitted, and in the course of his trial you had the judges saying that his brother was probably the orchestrator of the entire attack. It was extraordinary. But as I said, he's not been charged with any offence. But the evidence that came out in that case basically pointed to Patsy Hutch's central involvement in the shooting that caused Kinahan cartel associate David Byrne to be murdered. So yeah, we've often wondered then from that day on, is Patsy Hutch under investigation? Will he face any charges in relation to it? And that's how it led to the story that we ultimately wrote last week.
So it took us a couple of days to get the confirmation, and we were, as I said, hoping for the DPP has been asked to charge Patsy Hutch. So I was in contact with somebody, and my query came back, there are to be no more charges than this. And that was a real holy shit moment, because it was further than we thought it could possibly be. And I said, no more charges, right? DPP has ruled. I said, fuck. Pardon my language. So essentially, I then queried and said, does that mean the case is over? And they said, I wouldn't say it's dead, but pending any more evidence, it's effectively dead in the water. And that is the case. So I think they were surprised at that.
That's an interesting admission because certainly right after Jerry Hutch was acquitted, the guards were at pains to say that the investigation into the Regency remained open and that the inquiries were ongoing. It's very different language that we're being given now.
Mm.
Basically, the direction that we're being told now is that, yeah, look, okay, the guards are never going to say an investigation's closed, right? Especially one of this magnitude. It was the biggest gangland murder in the history of the state. But we're effectively now being guided that the investigation is cold and that the further charges that they might have sought, say, for example, with Patsy Hutch, are going nowhere unless they get new evidence. But what they put to the DPP has been rejected. And you can kind of maybe understand why, because obviously the case of Jerry Hutch completely fell on its face. And that was, look, that I'll say it, that was an embarrassment to the state,
Mm.
to the DPP in particular, who sought to charge Jerry Hutch with murder and specifically to say that he was the shooter. I think that they don't want any more egg on their face, and so that's what's happened here. But I do think it's extraordinary, isn't it, when you've got so much evidence that came out about another man, a different man completely, a man who wasn't on trial, supposedly centrally involved, allegedly, and
So
he may never face charges.
the Byrne family may have the right to ask the DPP for an explanation. The DPP never usually before did give explanations, but I think there is a process now where the families can. But that's up to themselves. But I think you're right, Paul. It was a shit show. Let's
Mm,
be honest, really. Largely, I think because of Jonathan Dowdall, because
yes.
his evidence made them charge, say that made the state claim that Jerry Hutch pulled the trigger against David Byrne. So maybe it is a case of it's all about the open people's confidence in justice, and I think people's confidence did take a battering in that. So who knows? But look, I mean, it's not good anyway for the state's perspective anyway.
No, yeah, I suppose, yeah, they don't want any more egg in their face is the best way
Yeah.
to put it. But just I don't want to go through chapter and verse of what was said in the special criminal court, but people may recall that there was a lot of evidence about Garda surveillance on Patsy Hutch in the car park out there um, in North Dublin. Sorry, where was it?
Was it Raheny?
Clare Hall Shopping
Oh,
Centre,
okay.
yeah. And he met with Shane Roan, and they sat in a car together, and the weapons that were used in the Regency were subsequently transferred from one car to the other, while the two kind of basically were involved in that. Then also Patsy Hutch was seen and involved in CCTV in relation to the moving of the vehicles in and out of Buckingham Place, the vehicles that were then in convoy that went to the Regency Hotel. And then Patsy Hutch was also allegedly involved in getting Jonathan Dowdall and his father to book the hotel room that was then used by Kevin Murray, Flatcap Murray. So there was like multiple different things that came up in the trial that kept linking back to Patsy Hutch. And I remember each time sitting through the trial and it was like, okay, Patsy Hutch. Okay, when are we getting to Jerry Hutch? When are we getting to the evidence against the man who's actually on trial? Of which there was very little when it came to actually charging with the charge of murder. So yeah, there was an awful lot of evidence about Patsy Hutch. So I suppose in a way it's obvious that they did then, or that they were at least considering a charge in relation to him.
And you actually doorstepped Patsy Hutch. I don't know, was it the day after, but a couple of days after the verdict.
Yes, last year, Patsy Hutch didn't talk to me, blanked me. One of those infamous occasions where you get blanked. But yeah, approached him near his home in Champions Avenue and just asked him, did he have anything to say about the fact that the judges had effectively put him in the frame for the Regency Hotel? He just looked at me and walked on. So I mean, would you blame him? Of course, he's not going to say anything. He has, I think he's got off lucky. His brother was put through a very high profile trial. He got off lucky. Um, had that evidence been put against Patsy Hush, at least in the eyes of Miss Justice Tara Burns, she said that beyond all reasonable doubt he was centrally involved. So I think he's very lucky.
Very, very lucky. So essentially, if we believe what we were hearing, the feud is dead in the water. Really? I know that there was a minor, well, not a minor incident, an incident. Wasn't any shooting a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That fellow was attacked. Well, Curtis, was it?
Yes, Stephen
Yeah, and
Curtis.
Stephen Curtis. But the feud is effectively dead in the water, and so is the Garda investigation into the Regency, unless something cataclysmic happens. So everybody's going
You
to move
never
on,
know.
really. You never know.
And speaking of the
Maybe
feud,
we,
again, stories continue to come out off the back of that. And as we're speaking today, the story has been published about James Mago Gately, in that the Criminal Assets Bureau have finally seized his home and a Rolex watch belonging to him. Mago Gately was another person who was alleged to have been involved in the Regency Hotel incident, and Jonathan Dowdall claimed that it was Jerry Hutch and Mago Gately that were the two men with the dressed as Gardaí with the AK-47 rifles that shot and killed David Byrne. Mago Gately's never been charged over that, but the Criminal Assets Bureau ruling basically yesterday was that James Gately's home in Dublin was the proceeds of crime. A lot of interesting evidence about just, I mean, the kind of wealth that he and his partner Charlene Lamb had. That they had this house that was worth about 200 grand, and they pumped about 400,000 euro worth into it in terms of an extension. Um,
it's a
so, I
very
mean,
big extension.
a very, very big extension. And the judge in the case uh, said that he was clearly somebody of immense wealth. I'm just going to get the what he said up here. Yeah, so he said that the home was overwhelmingly the proceeds of crime. That's Judge Alex Owen, and he said that Mago Gately and his partner Charlene Lamb lived an exotic lifestyle that was funded by criminal cash. Um, yeah, 440,000 euro he spent on a house that was actually bought for 125,000 euro. So he was clearly somebody of means. And between 2013 and 2019, the couple lived a life entirely subsidized by criminal cash. The court heard. Um, they went on cruises. They went to Asia and the Caribbean. So living a life of luxury. Now, James Gately has been the target of assassination bids, and he has had a difficult life in regards to the feud.
Yes, and I noticed Keelan Smith, who was one of two people convicted over an assassination or murder attempt in against Mr. Gately in May 2017. He appealed his conviction and it went to the Supreme Court. And I was saying to Paul, there was something I wanted to talk about, and I'd forgotten, but it's come back to me, and this is really, really significant. The challenge was based on phone data.
Yes.
So the Supreme Court ruled, I think it's 6-1. There was one dissenting voice that the phone data should have been allowed in. In other words, the conviction was upheld. Now, this is really significant because in 2018, the High Court here ruled that the mass use of retention of phone data went against European law. That was a challenge taken by Mr. Graham Dwyer. Now, a lot of people saw that and used it for their own appeals, including Keelan Smith. Now, yeah. He lost that. Dwyer has his own appeal against conviction to the same Supreme Court. Now, I saw Mary Carolan in the Irish Times said that it's not identical, the grounds of appeal, but they're very, very similar. To me and you as lay people, they're probably the same, but Mary knows her onions when it comes to law. So this has been interpreted that the judges basically said, there's democratic need for justice, and things have to happen for there to be justice, and overturning this would be against justice effectively, right? Mm-hmm. So where does that leave Graham Dwyer? Because this is a very, very significant blow to him. It's not dead, but he has to be reeling in his cell in Midlands prison, isn't it?
The Midlands prison, yeah. That wasn't on my topics, but yes, a very interesting development, yeah.
No contact survives the plan with the enemy, Paul.
No.
Oh, no,
But in terms of his in terms of his appeal, that is a significant blow. It's extraordinary, isn't it, that these criminals who have been caught red-handed, that this phone evidence effectively nails them
Mm.
of their guilt, and then the only defense that they have is, "Oh, you've breached my privacy." It's
Yeah.
ridiculous, and thank God, I think it's the right ruling.
I,
Like, I mean, they've been found to be otherwise, they've been found to have been clearly proven guilty by the evidence, and the only defense that they have is that their privacy has been breached.
and an important point. So the Dwyer trial was in 2015. It'll be 10 years in April for the Dwyer trial, but the murder of Leon O'Hara was 2013. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when the mobile phone evidence was used, and then it
Mm.
was gathered at a later date. And the attack on Gately was in 2017. The High
Yeah.
Court ruling that said that the use of retention data was in 2018. So
Mm.
even while it was happening, it was still legal, and that was one of the key points of the judges. While this happened, it was unintentional by the guards because they weren't aware that it was contrary to European law.
Mm. Mm. That Caelan Smith challenge has held up a number of cases. Caelan Smith, just to remind people, because the plot that he was involved in to kill Mago Gately, um, that was the attempt to actually shoot him, and he was shot, but he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Is that right? Or am I talking
Yes, he
about?
was. Yes, I
Yeah.
remember the case very well. I was down the country on another job. I think it was in Wexford. Something had happened, some tragedy, and the same day he was shot, and we were all led to believe he was dead because I think he was shot 5 times,
Hmm.
4 or 5 times. Do you remember that day, May
I do.
2017? Very
Yeah.
sunny day, and he was shot, and everybody converged on the garage there at Coolock. But he lived because he'd been wearing body armor, but that was at the height of the feud when there were a lot of people wearing body armor in Dublin.
Yeah, he was expecting he was expecting to be targeted, and it wasn't the first time that he had been targeted. It wasn't the last time he would be targeted, and obviously the Kinahan cartel considered him to be a key
Mm.
member of the Hutch mob, and they believed him to be centrally involved in the Regency attack, and that's why he was targeted. He obviously carried the coffin of Gary Hutch as well, who was a close friend of his. So, um, but I mean, this was a significant blow for Mago Gately yesterday in that his house has been seized, and he has effectively, been declared a serious criminal in open court. Now, lots of evidence came out about him from the Criminal Assets Bureau, tying him, saying to a number of crimes, and saying that he was investigated for 3 murders. So okay, he hasn't been convicted of any of those murders, but interesting, I mean, this come up before that his name was circulated in relation to the murder of Eamon the Don Dunn, for example,
Mm.
back in 2010. So he has been on the Garda radar for a long time.
But he has had a bad week and a good week because, as you say, it was said in the Regency trial, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was said in the Regency trial about him being involved in it with Jerry Hutch. But now, when we were told that the DPP is not going to have any more charges, that means him as well. It doesn't just mean Patsy Hutch.
Interesting. Didn't think of that.
You know what I mean? Because,
Yeah,
well, am I right or
yeah.
wrong? His name was mentioned in the court as being involved.
It was. It was. Yeah.
But we were told there's no more charges in the Regency. So that
Yeah.
means it doesn't just mean Patsy Hutch. It means Mago
Yeah.
Gately as well. So good week, bad week, bit of yin and yang.
Yeah, yeah. And just obviously also in terms of Mago Gately, another story I wanted to mention. Obviously the other attempt on Mago Gately was by Estonian hitman Imre Arakis. Now Imre Arakis was hired by the Kinahan cartel 2018 to go after and kill James Mago Gately, and we've talked about how Daniel Kinahan was possibly centrally involved in that, ordering him over encrypted conversations to target Mago Gately. But he was caught red-handed. He served a 6-year sentence here in Ireland, and he was subsequently extradited to Lithuania, where he's in prison and facing charges in relation to two murders and an attempted murder. But the development this week that's come out is that Imre Arakis has now allegedly told police he hasn't pleaded guilty before a court of law, but he has admitted his guilt allegedly in relation to one of the murders that he is accused of, a murder of an MMA fighter whose name, forgive me, I'm going to get completely wrong now. In terms of pronouncing it, but he's a Lithuanian man who was murdered in December of 2016. His name is I'm going to have a go with it.
Fair play.
Mariglis Morvidicus. So he was an MMA fighter and a kickboxer, and he was shot dead in December 2016. And Lithuanian police investigated Imre Arakis in relation to it. And the development this week is that they say in interrogation, in interview, that Arrakis has admitted to his involvement in that and the attempted murder of another man who was shot in and around that time, who was targeted in and around that time. So he has to go before court. He's going to appear in July in relation to that. But a significant development in that Arrakis has now admitted involvement in yet another murder plot.
I think the guards were hopeful he was going to give evidence against Daniel Kinahan for that. It didn't happen, but I think they were sort of expecting it. So who knows what happened in the.
And I see that he's done a number of interviews from his prison cell where he has said that, and he said that he wouldn't give up the Kinahans and considered them to be friends. He also spoke about this murder that he has now allegedly admitted his guilt to, saying that he claimed that Lithuanian police wanted him to go into some sort of plea bargain arrangement and admit that the Kinahans were involved in that murder in some way. And to basically loop them in so that they could be brought to potentially to Lithuania. And he said he wasn't going to do that either. He has denied involvement in that murder and also in the other murder that he is accused of over there. Now police are saying he's admitted to it. So we'll have to see what happens there.
It wasn't do you remember when it first came out about him, it was all this super international hitman. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Going,
yeah.
It's a bit amateurish, the one here, wasn't it really? Remember, wasn't he walking around Dublin dressed as a woman or something?
Yeah, and he had all sorts of kind of odd equipment with him, a mask and everything. He's a very strange character, and seems to lie an awful lot. Says one thing and then does the other. He kind of reminds me of Jonathan Dowdall in that sense, but yeah, he just seems odd, and it kind of oddly like a celebrity type character out in Estonia, Lithuania. Like he's quite well known. It seems strange that at that point in 2018 that the Kinnans were hiring somebody like that. I mean, I think the second that he arrived in Ireland, a red flag had been raised with the Gardaí already. It's like this guy who's quite well known to be an infamous hitman in Eastern Europe is now suddenly on your shores. I mean, I think straight away they were on him, weren't they? They were surveilling him pretty early on.
Oh, they were. It was DOCB, Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, and ERU, and there's this fantastic piece of detective work by a DOCB detective when they stormed the house in Blanchardstown, and they went in, and Arrakis had one of those techno or EncroChat phones, and there was a message which the state will allege came from Daniel Kinahan saying "kill Mago Gately," and because it was set up to destroy itself, self wipe. They knew that they only had a matter of seconds, so the Doc B head took out his own phone and took a picture of it.
Yeah, no, Arrakis has apparently subsequently claimed that he knew exactly who James Gately was, and that if he wanted to assassinate him, he didn't need a picture of him. He didn't need to be sent a picture of him because he knew him, he'd met him before. So that's what he's claimed. Of course, Arrakis pleaded guilty. So, he said that since he was convicted.
Let me ask you something that's just come into my head when you mentioned Jonathan Dowdall and this fella talking out of their hoops, right? Can you trust criminals journalistically?
I mean, with a pinch of salt, I would take everything that I'm being told. That doesn't mean I wouldn't check out something that I was told by someone who was in the criminal underworld, but no, is what I would say.
There are people involved in the other underworld that I speak to, and I trust implicitly.
Okay.
People that might not want to hear that. They keep me right, and they've never been wrong.
Yeah, no, I have had that situation as well, but I at least in my experience, the people that I've spoken to have always they've never expected me to take what they say at face value. They have always check it out, or you either take my word for it or you don't. They do at least show the respect to know that, look, I'm a journalist and I'm not going to necessarily just believe everything that you tell me. But of course, we talk to people in the criminal world. Yeah, absolutely.
And look, there's that old saying that one of my old editors had: if your mummy says she loves you, check it out. Okay. So that's no problem. But there are criminals, I make no bones about this. There are criminals who I talk to and trust. Now, you check them out, but if other people tell me things, we check them out. But, I'll stand over that.
I suppose, would you have gotten that John Gilligan story had you not, spoken to people in that world? So yeah, those things do,
Mm.
yeah, we do have to pay attention to them.
100%. And it's anything, you have human relationships and you develop, you develop strong relationships of
Hmm.
trust going
Hmm.
back years. So it
Hmm.
happens.
So shall we talk about Raymond Shorten?
Please do.
Now, we're slightly limited in what we can say in relation to this a little bit because Raymond Shorten has yet to be sentenced as of the recording of this podcast, but he has been convicted um, of two rapes of two separate women. He is a Dublin taxi man, and I think this story has completely shocked the country because, yeah, look, I mean, everybody who lives in Dublin at some point is getting a taxi and late at night. And in particular, this is very scary for women and for anyone who has a daughter or a sister, who might consider taking a taxi home late at night. Raymond Shorten preyed on the two women and sexually attacked them. He anally raped one of them and raped another one, um, dropping them home essentially. These women were admittedly, they said that they were under the influence of alcohol, but they Shorten got into the back of the taxi with them and attacked them when they were in a vulnerable state. Um, the jury believed them and convicted Raymond Shorten of two counts of rape. As I said, one of those was an anal rape charge. Since then, I have spoken to one of Raymond Shorten's daughters, Nikita, who basically was, her and she had basically put out a social media post, which we'd seen, in which she said that the man who was her father was now nothing to them as a family. So I asked her, could we use that post? She'd said yes, and she also spoke to me just briefly. She said that they weren't coping good at all, and she said, I hope he gets what he deserves. She said he didn't only hurt them girls, but he broke us, and we'll have to live with that for the rest of our lives. But we're a strong family, and once we have each other, we'll get through anything. So I suppose that story kind of just shows, and not only did it hurt those two women, but it has affected a family as well who probably had a particular view of their father until certain things came to light. And I mean, that post that Nikita put up, she said that she was grieving for a father that they once had or once thought that they had. So it shows the ripple effect of it. But I think it's just scary in general that I mean, you kind of think that your loved ones or your friends or whatever, you put them into a taxi late at night, that they're going to get home safe, and that this kind of predator can exist. I suppose maybe it's not a shock to you or I, who cover all manner of things, but I think he just looks like a typical ordinary Irish taxi man, and I think that's the scary element of it for people.
Yes, and as you say, we are limited, but so he is going to be. He's in custody? Is he? I presume he's gone into custody following his
He is,
conviction.
yeah,
Okay,
gone into custody now.
okay. So it's up to the judge on sentencing, as we always say. But I'll just point out that the judge has wide powers of sentencing. So
Yeah,
the maximum sentence for rape is life, and it can go down to anything. But that shows you,
yeah,
rape is dealt with at the Central Criminal Court, along with attempted murder and murder. So that shows you how serious a rape charge is. But
yeah,
as I said, it's entirely up to the judge. But I'm just giving an indication of the sentencing power that the judge has.
yeah. I'll just go into it briefly, and if anyone doesn't want to hear this, just I'm going to go into some of the detail that was heard in court. Um, both of the women, they were aged 19 and 20 when the incidents occurred in June and August 2022. They said they'd been socializing on the night, and they found themselves in the taxi where the rapes occurred. They strongly denied consenting to sex. Shorten said that they consented. In her evidence, the first woman said she drank 5 pints of cider, an amount she wasn't used to on the night of the 25th of June 2022. She described gaps in her memory in the journey home. She recalled walking up to the front passenger seat of the car in the early hours with a man driving. She felt very dazed. Her eyes were heavy. She said the man moved her to the back seat where he raped her. anally and vaginally. When he finished, he returned to the driver's seat and dropped her home. Um, the second woman then, August 2022, she said she was due to stay with a friend, but she decided to get a taxi home. She was tired and drunk. She fell asleep in the back of the taxi. She said the next thing she remembered was waking up and the taxi driver was raping her. She said she was in shock, didn't know how to fight back. Afterwards, he dropped her home and he asked for the fare. He got a charger from the house. Sorry, she got a charger from her house as her phone had died. She went back to the taxi to charge it, and one of her parents then paid the taxi fare. Um, so that's just some of the testimony. The woman described how she broke down crying when she told her parents ultimately what had happened to her.
Right.
I think I'll probably leave it there because
Yeah.
that kind of sums it up. But it's a very scary case and a shocking case. I think one that's kind of stunned the nation. So Raymond Shorten's due to be sentenced in relation to that, I believe, next month.
And look, this doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it. Vast majority of taxi drivers are fantastic people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I mean, a lot of people in the taxi industry have been quite stunned and shocked by this as well. So it's just one of those cases that stops you in your tracks, isn't it?
Mm.
Very
Grim.
sad.
Very, very, very grim.
So we'll leave
Okay.
it there.
Yeah.
Thanks very much to everyone for listening to us. We've been going through your questions and we're going to do our best to answer them over the next while. And you might hear our first Q&A pod next week. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.